The private dinner was supposed to bring the royal family together behind closed doors. Instead, one cutting outburst brought the evening to a sudden and humiliating halt. Queen Camilla directed a disrespectful remark toward Princess Charlotte. Catherine immediately rose from her chair, and within moments, the young princess was being escorted from the room by her mother. No announcement was made, no explanation was offered, but everyone seated at that table understood that a line had just been crossed. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Catherine entered Windsor believing the evening might calm a family strained by private disagreements. The gathering included King Charles, Camilla, William, Charlotte, Princess Anne, and relatives. Windsor was not merely a royal residence, it was a monarchy family home, where private decisions carried wider consequences. Charles wanted unity. Anne wanted honesty. William wanted his daughter treated with warmth, not watched like a symbol. Charlotte had been invited for a reason. Catherine wanted her to learn royal customs without cameras, crowds, or ceremonial pressure. William agreed, because the young princess needed to feel included, rather than examined. A private royal dinner meant a family meal, arranged away from public duties. Yet even there, rank and resentment followed everyone to the table. Camilla's anger surfaced without warning. She told Charlotte she was behaving as though the evening had been arranged around her, then added that royal children must learn when they are important and when they are merely present. Charlotte froze. Her eyes dropped. Her hands tightened beneath the table as she fought to keep her face still. Catherine saw everything. She placed her napkin beside her plate, rose with frightening calm, and said, "You are coming with me." She did not debate the queen consort. She did not ask permission. The princess reached for Charlotte and turned toward the door. William remained seated for several seconds. He wanted to follow his wife, but he knew silence could make Camilla believe the insult would be tolerated. Charles said nothing. The king neither defended his granddaughter nor asked Catherine to stay, and that hesitation made the room colder. Anne watched mother and daughter leave, then turned directly toward Camilla. The Princess Royal, the title given to the monarch's eldest daughter, did not need to raise her voice. Her expression carried a warning. This would not be dismissed as a misunderstanding. The door closed. William pushed back his chair. Catherine had removed her daughter from the room, but the wound remained at the table, and William was about to force every person present to acknowledge who had caused it. Behind the closed dining room door were not merely royal titles competing for influence. There was a mother who had seen her daughter humiliated, a father struggling to contain his anger, a young princess trying not to cry, and a queen consort who believed her authority was being quietly challenged. The confrontation mattered because each person carried something different into that room, and Camilla's outburst struck directly at the fear Catherine had spent years trying to protect Charlotte from. Catherine guided Charlotte into a small adjoining sitting room and closed the door behind them. The Princess of Wales, the formal title held by the wife of the heir to the throne, had spent years trying to give her daughter something royal life rarely offered: emotional safety. She knew the child would one day be compared with famous women from the family's past. She refused to let those comparisons decide who Charlotte believed she had to become. Charlotte stood quietly, still fighting the tears she had hidden at the table. She could face crowds with confidence and complete public duties without complaint. Yet criticism from senior relatives reached her differently. Every word felt heavier in private. She wanted William and Catherine to feel proud of her, and the thought that she might have embarrassed them hurt more than Camilla's insult itself. Charlotte finally looked up and asked, "Did I do something wrong?" Catherine immediately knelt and took both of her hands. She told her that the remark came from an adult's anger, not from anything the young princess had done. Then she noticed a formal hair clip pressing tightly against her daughter's head. The mother removed it gently. That small act broke the child's remaining control, and Charlotte began crying against her shoulder. Catherine held her close, but fury mixed with guilt. She blamed Camilla for choosing a child as the target of an adult resentment. Yet she also questioned herself. Had bringing Charlotte to the dinner placed her inside a struggle that had already been growing between the older members of the family? William carried a different anger. The prince remembered how often silence had been used during his childhood to protect appearances while pain was left unanswered. He would not allow Charlotte to endure the same pattern merely because challenging the queen consort might make Charles uncomfortable. Camilla remained inside the dining room, but her confidence had already begun to weaken. Catherine's popularity and Charlotte's natural warmth reminded her that the monarchy's emotional center was moving toward the Wales family. Her outburst had not revealed authority. It had exposed fear. Anne understood that immediately. The Princess Royal, the title traditionally given to the monarch's eldest daughter, remembered 2 earlier moments when Camilla had questioned Charlotte's place in private family traditions. She now knew the insult had not been spontaneous. Charles faced the choice everyone had feared. Defending his wife could drive William and Catherine away. Condemning her could expose the fracture he had spent years hiding. Charlotte's tears revealed the human cost of the outburst. But the cruelty at dinner had not appeared from nowhere. It had been building toward one specific moment for weeks. The insult at the dinner table appeared sudden only to those who had ignored the warnings. Weeks earlier, a smaller confrontation had unfolded during preparations for a private royal anniversary event. No voices were raised. No one left the room. Yet one decision involving Charlotte's place beside Catherine created a resentment that never disappeared. From that moment forward, Camilla no longer viewed the young princess as a child learning her role. She viewed her as evidence that royal influence was shifting away from her. Catherine had introduced Charlotte to carefully chosen family gatherings with patience. She wanted her daughter to understand royal life without turning childhood into an endless test. A private anniversary dinner was a closed family celebration marking an important royal milestone, not a public ceremony. That mattered because Catherine believed quieter occasions allowed the young princess to learn tradition without cameras judging every movement. Camilla saw the arrangement differently. The queen consort had begun questioning why Charlotte appeared beside her mother at increasingly important gatherings. She argued that too much attention could create expectations about the child's future before the family had defined her role. Yet beneath that concern was something sharper. Each time Charlotte stood near Catherine, the Wales family appeared more united, more visible, and more central to the monarchy's future. 3 weeks before the disastrous dinner, the tension became impossible to ignore. During a rehearsal for King Charles's private anniversary gathering, Camilla ordered an attendant to move Charlotte's chair away from Catherine and place it at the far end of the younger family table. Catherine entered as the attendant carried the place card across the room. She stopped immediately and asked who had authorized the change. Camilla answered without hesitation. She said, "Children should not be positioned as symbols of influence." Catherine did not raise her voice. She returned the chair to its original position and told the queen consort that Charlotte had been invited by Charles and would sit beside her mother. The attendant froze between them, realizing the argument was no longer about furniture. It was about who had the right to decide where the Wales family belonged. Camilla felt publicly overruled. She saw Catherine's decision as a direct rejection of her authority. The princess saw something far more personal, an attempt to isolate her daughter and send a warning through the seating plan. Charles later assured Catherine that Charlotte's place would remain unchanged. Yet the king also asked her not to challenge his wife in front of household staff again. That request disturbed her. He had protected the arrangement, but he had also placed Camilla's pride above the child's security. Anne soon warned William, during a private conversation, that the dispute was not about protocol. The Princess Royal believed Camilla was testing whether Catherine would retreat once Charlotte became the target. William remembered that warning. Before the next dinner, Camilla learned that Charlotte would again sit beside her mother. She raised no objection. She waited. The chair had been restored, but the resentment had not. At the private dinner, Camilla finally said aloud what she had been trying to communicate through protocol. When Catherine disappeared through the doorway with Charlotte, William faced a choice that would define the rest of the evening. He could follow his family and leave Camilla's words unanswered, or he could remain long enough to make certain they were never repeated. The prince slowly stood, turned back toward the table, and looked directly at the woman who had reduced his daughter to silence. What followed was not a disagreement over etiquette. It was a father drawing a boundary. William stood opposite Camilla and asked her to explain exactly what Charlotte had done to deserve such words. The queen consort answered that the girl needed discipline if she was going to attend adult occasions. A private royal dinner was a family gathering held away from public duties, but rank still shaped every exchange inside it. That mattered because Charlotte had not entered the room as a public figure. She had entered as a child among relatives. William's voice remained controlled. He told Camilla that discipline did not require humiliation. Charles watched his son grip the back of Charlotte's empty chair, and the king understood how close the prince was to losing that control. Camilla refused to retreat. She said Catherine had overreacted by removing the child and had turned one correction into a spectacle. William answered immediately. The spectacle, he said, began when an adult used her position to diminish a 9-year-old girl at a family table. Charles ordered them both to lower their voices. The monarch wanted calm, but his son would not allow the conflict to be reduced to bad manners on both sides. William demanded that his father acknowledge the difference between protecting a humiliated child and causing the humiliation in the first place. Anne finally interrupted. The Princess Royal, the title traditionally given to the monarch's eldest daughter, said she had heard every word clearly. She confirmed that Charlotte had done nothing disruptive. The remark had not been corrective, and it had not been accidental. Camilla turned toward Charles, expecting him to defend her. Instead, the king asked whether she had already been angry about Charlotte's seating position before the dinner began. The question changed everything. He knew about the earlier dispute. He had not forgotten Catherine moving the chair back beside her own. Camilla realized the argument had expanded beyond one painful sentence. William, Anne, and Charles were now examining whether she had deliberately targeted Charlotte because Catherine had previously refused to surrender control. William stepped away from the chair and told his father that his children would no longer attend private events where their dignity depended on Camilla's mood. Then he left to find Catherine. Charles remained seated beside his untouched glass. He quietly asked Anne whether the words had sounded deliberate. They sounded prepared, she answered. The king's expression hardened. William had defended his daughter, but the next decision belonged to Charles, and for once, silence would no longer protect either his wife or the crown. The most powerful person in the room had spoken the least. King Charles had watched Catherine leave, heard William confront Camilla, and listened as Anne confirmed that Charlotte had been singled out without cause. Now the family's private crisis had reached the monarch himself. This was no longer only about an insult. It was about whether royal rank gave Camilla the freedom to wound a child, and whether Charles would sacrifice his relationship with his son to avoid confronting his wife. Charles had always trusted private compromise. He calmed tempers, delayed decisions, and tried to keep personal conflict from becoming a crisis for the crown. The crown meant the monarchy as an institution, not merely the person wearing the crown. That instinct had protected the family before. But tonight, neutrality would look like permission. Charlotte changed everything. She was not simply another guest at a royal table. She was his granddaughter, William's daughter, and a child whose trust had been damaged inside the king's own residence. Charles understood that avoiding the dispute could cost him more than peace with Camilla. It could cost him his bond with the Wales family. Charles entered his private study without removing his evening jacket. A senior household attendant followed with a written account of the dinner. The account was a formal record of what the witness had personally heard and seen. The monarch read every line, placed the paper on his desk, removed his glasses, and asked one question. "Did the princess provoke the exchange?" "No, sir," the attendant answered. Camilla entered moments later and immediately accused the household of turning a family disagreement into an inquiry. She told Charles that his silence had weakened her position before William and Anne. The queen consort insisted that Catherine had made the matter worse by leaving so dramatically. Charles did not soften his response. He told her that authority could not depend on a child remaining silent after being humiliated. Camilla stopped speaking. For the first time that evening, the king had placed responsibility directly on her. Charles then revealed that the incident was not isolated. Catherine had already informed him about the rehearsal seating dispute, and Anne had warned him during a private conversation that resentment toward Charlotte was growing. The monarch had hoped the tension would fade. Instead, his delay had allowed it to deepen. Charles made the decision quietly. Camilla would no longer hold independent authority over arrangements involving the Wales children. Any change to their seating, attendance, or ceremonial placement would require approval from William and Catherine. Ceremonial placement meant where members of the family stood or sat during formal royal occasions. Camilla asked whether Catherine had demanded the restriction. "She has demanded nothing yet," Charles replied. The words landed harder than anger. Charles had restricted Camilla's reach, but rules could not repair Charlotte's trust, and by morning, the entire royal household would begin feeling the consequences. The morning after the dinner, there was no public announcement and no official acknowledgement. Yet inside Windsor, the consequences were unmistakable. Breakfast places remained empty. Meetings were postponed. Messages went unanswered. Catherine had not simply removed Charlotte from one painful evening. She had withdrawn her children from an environment she no longer considered emotionally safe. The family had spent years fearing a public split, but the first real fracture appeared quietly in the form of 3 unoccupied chairs. Catherine cancelled Charlotte's attendance at a private music gathering with Charles later that week. She also withdrew George and Louis, refusing to protect one child while allowing the others to continue as though nothing had happened. A private family engagement was an event held away from public duties, but its meaning was still serious. These gatherings were where trust was built, roles were learned, and bonds were supposed to deepen. William supported the decision without hesitation. He informed the king that every future invitation involving the children would be reviewed by both parents before acceptance. The prince understood what the change meant. The Wales children would no longer be treated as automatically available whenever the wider family wanted unity. Charlotte sat beside Catherine at breakfast and asked whether her grandfather was angry because she had left the dinner. The question struck her mother harder than the insult itself. The princess reassured her that Charles was not angry, but the child's fear revealed how deeply she had blamed herself. Catherine later told William that any apology made only to restore appearances could cause more harm. She feared Charlotte would feel forced to forgive before she felt safe. He agreed. Neither parent would allow royal comfort to become more important than their daughter's recovery. Camilla received the revised family calendar before noon. The queen consort read the cancellation of her planned afternoon tea with the Wales children twice, then placed the schedule on the table. A royal calendar was the official plan for family duties and private engagements. When her aide quietly left, she remained alone, finally facing the cost of her words. Anne arrived without staff and confirmed that Charles had restricted Camilla's authority over arrangements involving the children. The Princess Royal explained that no seating, attendance, or ceremonial decision could now be changed without William and Catherine. The mother felt relief, but she said rules were not the same as accountability. William then received a draft note from Camilla describing her remark as misinterpreted guidance. He rejected it immediately. The wording admitted no cruelty and placed the burden of misunderstanding on Charlotte. Catherine later found her daughter folding the dinner place card and placing it inside a drawer. When she asked why, Charlotte said she did not want to see it anymore. Her mother closed the drawer and sat beside her. Then Charlotte made one quiet request. She wanted to speak to Charles herself. The adults had been negotiating authority and apologies. But Charlotte's request to face her grandfather would change the direction of the entire conflict. No advisor stood beside them. No private secretary prepared the words. When Charlotte entered her grandfather's sitting room, the crisis was stripped of titles, protocol, and competing versions of events. There was only a young girl trying to understand why a senior member of her family had spoken to her with such contempt, and a grandfather realizing that silence had allowed the injury to deepen. What Charlotte said next achieved what no confrontation at the dinner table had managed to do. Charlotte asked to speak with Charles without Camilla present. Catherine and William agreed to wait in the adjoining room, close enough to protect her but far enough to let her speak freely. A private secretary was a senior royal aide who normally prepared meetings and formal messages, but no such buffer stood between grandfather and granddaughter now. Charlotte feared that another adult in the room would turn her pain into another argument. Charles moved away from his desk and sat in the chair opposite her. The king told Charlotte she was not in trouble. He said leaving the dinner had been the right decision, and he wanted her to understand that before anything else was discussed. Charlotte hesitated, then explained what the outburst had done. Camilla's words had made her feel as though she had been invited only so the adults could decide whether she deserved a place among them. She had not felt like family. She had felt examined. Charlotte then asked the question Charles had been avoiding. Why did nobody say it was wrong? Charles struggled to answer. The monarch could not defend his silence without admitting that the family had spent years avoiding difficult truths to preserve peace. Protocol meant the rules and customs governing royal conduct. But even those rules could not excuse leaving a child alone in humiliation. Charles reached for the original seating card from the dinner, tore it once across the middle, and placed it aside. He told Charlotte that no arrangement, title, or tradition mattered more than her knowing she was loved. Charles then apologized. He did not blame confusion, tension, or the shock of the moment. The king accepted that his silence had allowed her to believe the adults agreed with Camilla. He admitted that he had failed her when she needed immediate protection. Charlotte surprised him with her response. She did not want Camilla removed from every family event. She wanted the queen consort to promise that she would never speak to her or another child that way again. Charles called Catherine and William into the room and repeated the request exactly. The princess felt pride and sadness at once. The prince recognized that his daughter had shown more restraint than the adults who had surrounded her. Charles made his decision. Camilla would apologize directly, without advisors, prepared language, or claims of misunderstanding. Charlotte had offered the family a path back from the brink. But that path required Camilla to surrender the one thing she had defended throughout the crisis, her refusal to admit she had been wrong. The palace had kept the dinner private, but it could not conceal the sudden cancellations, the changed schedules, or Charlotte's unexplained absence from a gathering with her grandfather. By the following evening, Britain was no longer asking whether something had happened. It was asking what could have forced Catherine to remove her daughter from a royal family dinner. When the first account of Camilla's remark reached the public, the reaction was swift and painfully personal for everyone inside Windsor. Palace officials first described Charlotte's absence as a family scheduling matter. The phrase was meant to calm attention without confirming conflict, but it failed almost immediately. William, Catherine, George, Charlotte, and Louis had all withdrawn from several connected private appearances. A palace statement was an official message issued on behalf of the royal household. Yet this one explained too little. The empty spaces said far more. Commentators quickly turned toward the tension between Catherine and Camilla. They examined their different views of the Wales children, especially whether young royals should be protected from pressure or prepared through strict exposure. The princess believed childhood required emotional safety. The queen consort appeared to believe royal duty demanded toughness, even when that toughness caused pain. The following morning, One London newspaper captured the crisis with a single front page. Beneath an empty place setting, the headline read, "A child should never have to leave the royal table." The image spread within hours and became the symbol of everything the palace had tried not to explain. An evening television discussion pushed the story even further. A veteran royal broadcaster said, "Catherine did not create the rupture by leaving. She revealed the rupture by refusing to make Charlotte endure it." The comment traveled rapidly across public debate. And suddenly the mother's decision was no longer being treated as dramatic. It was being treated as protective. A small crowd gathered outside Windsor Castle. Several parents left handwritten cards addressed to Charlotte, and palace staff quietly collected them. One message read, "You were right to walk away." Catherine saw a photograph of the cards and became emotional. She was not moved because strangers had chosen her side. She was moved because they had understood the shame Charlotte could not explain at the table. William stayed beside her, knowing public sympathy could comfort their daughter, but could not erase the memory. Camilla watched the broadcast alone. The Queen Consort realized her authority was now being measured against Catherine's instinct to protect a child. She also understood that another defense would harden the verdict against her. Charles rejected a proposed statement about family unity. The king insisted that no public message would appear until Camilla privately accepted responsibility before Charlotte. That evening, Camilla requested a meeting with Catherine and the young princess. She agreed to attend without Charles, advisors, or prepared remarks. The public had already decided that Charlotte deserved protection. Now Camilla had one final opportunity to prove that she understood why. The final meeting did not take place beneath chandeliers or before a row of royal advisors. Catherine chose a small family sitting room, where no ceremonial distance could soften what had happened. Charlotte sat beside her mother. William remained close but silent. When Camilla entered, she carried no written statement and offered no explanation about pressure or protocol. For the first time since the dinner, the Queen Consort faced the child she had hurt and the family she had nearly divided. Camilla sat opposite Charlotte and repeated the exact words she had used at the dinner. She admitted they had been disrespectful, unnecessary, and cruel. The Queen Consort, the title given to the wife of a reigning king, said her frustration had nothing to do with the young princess's behavior. It had come from her own fear of losing influence, and she had allowed that fear to fall on a child. Charlotte listened without interrupting. Camilla told her that adults sometimes misuse authority when they feel threatened, but she did not use insecurity as an excuse. She asked for forgiveness and made clear that the answer did not have to come immediately. Charlotte finally said she accepted the apology. Then she set a boundary. She did not want to attend another private dinner with Camilla until she felt ready. Catherine supported the decision without weakening it, and William confirmed that the choice belonged to their daughter. Catherine then delivered the truth Camilla could no longer avoid. The deepest damage had not come only from the insult. It had come from expecting Charlotte to remain seated, hide her pain, and protect the comfort of the adults around her. Camilla accepted the restrictions Charles had placed on her. She would no longer control arrangements involving the Wales children without approval from William and Catherine. Future disagreements would be taken directly to the parents, never expressed through George, Charlotte, or Louis. Charles later spoke with Charlotte alone. The king told her the safeguards would remain even after the apology. Forgiveness, he explained, did not require anyone to remove the protection that had become necessary. Charlotte eventually agreed to have tea with her grandfather. Catherine watched her go without fear, while William understood that trust was returning because the child, not royal convenience, had been allowed to choose the pace. Weeks later, Charlotte attended a smaller family lunch and selected the chair beside her mother. Camilla entered, paused, and sat across from them without objection. No place was moved. No authority was tested. Catherine rested a hand on her daughter's shoulder, and the meal began on Charlotte's terms. The door Catherine closed that night did not divide the monarchy forever. It forced the family to reopen it with respect, accountability, and a child's dignity finally placed above royal pride.